After lavishing various movies of praise that were released in this calendar year, it's time for the flip side. The stuff that at 1000 fucking percent load, these movies are so fucking bad I can't wait to rip them apart one more fucking time. Fucking. I'm John Rentham with my 15 least favorite movies of 2021 with some honorable mentions. Let me know your least favorite movies that were released in this calendar year in the comments, please. And like I've said in my previous installments, my favorite, least favorite horror movies, and even my favorite movies of the year, I was only able to get to 78 movies that were released in this calendar year, as opposed to the 138 movies that were released in 2020, because simply time just ran out. I had too much time on my hands because I'm terrible at gauging spices, and I'm not a very good cook. That's why I order out and why I eat out. Who doesn't love to eat out often? Anyway, enough of those images being put in your head. Let's talk about some of the various movies that I absolutely fucking hated. And also, full reviews of these movies are available on the Real Honest Movie Reviews playlist. And one more bit of full disclosure. Out of the 78 movies that I saw, I gave 29 F grades. So even all the F grade movies cannot make this list. So the honorable mentions include Fatal. Man, Hilary Swank. Hilary Swank has really fucking fallen, and this movie was not very fucking good. Shook. Yeah, I was shook to my core, realizing that this movie is really goddamn bad, and the twist and everything was just not very good. And I didn't exactly understand when you're doing an indie horror movie why you would make it so goddamn bad unless you just didn't give a shit. And then we get to Outside the Wire. Outside the Wire was about a futuristic, apocalyptic thing with, cybernetic people that go haywire and everything. Not that movie Haywire. We don't need Gina Carano butchering this goddamn thing. Outside the Wire was just stupid. It was like Netflix trying to be big and actiony and everything, and none of it was any good, and you didn't care about the villain, you didn't care about the hero, you didn't care about anybody in this goddamn movie. The Woman in the Window. Boy, they took this cast and just totally fucking butchered it. Jacob's Wife. CM Punk was in this for about 3 scenes, and it was a terrible, twist on the vampire genre. The Sinners. The Sinners, honestly, probably should have been in the top 15, but it was so fucking messy, and there were so many other movies that were non-horror that were worse than it. As incomprehensible and as messy and as fucking stupid and as bullshit as this movie was, I can't even put it in the top 15. That's how bad some of the other movies were. And then Clifford, the Big Red Dog, that I just recently reviewed. It's available on Paramount Plus, and oh boy, does it look bad. But those couldn't even make the list. Now we go to number 15, Rumble. So basically it's WWE attempting to try and do their own Pixar venture, and it was terrible. This stuff made the first Toy Story, which was released in 1995, by the way, and was way ahead of its time. Even some of that stuff is aged, and it still looks better than something like this. It was released in 2021, and also was a vehicle to get a couple wrestlers' voice acting roles, and it was really bad. Really, really fucking bad. The human characters didn't look good. This looked like something that you might see on maybe a PS3 game, and even that's probably being insulting to the PS3. Then we go to number 14, The Swarm. So, a French farmer mother tries to breed locusts, finds out they have a taste for blood, and does everything she can to basically, get this harvest working, including letting them feast on her, and then killing people and things and animals, and getting blood, and blood, and it was like that Bug movie with Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon, only worse. And then we go to number 13, Candyman. So let's just ignore the other 2 movies, which is probably smart, but let's do a sequel to the original Candyman, and let's just butcher it completely. And I'm not talking about wokeness. I'm not talking about the fact that this, the origination of why Candyman became what he was is because of police brutality and the racism and stuff like that. That's not the issue. The movie wasn't any good. And also, compared to my horror movie list, these are based on how they are as overall movies, not just as the horror aspect. So some movies that were maybe ranked below this one are going to be ranked higher because as far as overall movies, they were just really dog shit. But yeah, Candyman was fucking dog shit, and it was also obvious from the very beginning where they were going with it, and the villain was dumb, and none of it was good. And even them trying to pay tribute to Tony Todd's character and pay fan service wasn't good, and they're probably going to try to do a sequel. And it was terrible. It was fucking terrible. As a horror movie, as a movie in general. And then we get to number 12, Karen. The fact that Karen, basically a mock-up of, the Karen, the racist white woman with the terrible haircut, and Taryn Manning just absolutely wanting to tear into the Karens and all the bullshit and all the racism and all the crap and wanting to speak to the manager and all that. And just the fact that it was so comical how badly, over the top all the characters were and how one note they were. This movie had no right to exist, but it was also such an unintentionally hilarious comedy that I can't rank it in the top 10 because there were some movies that A, had a bigger budget, and B, were also just a lot worse. So Karen probably would have made it in the top 5 in any other year, but alas, it is only number 12. But if you watch it, my God, it's actually a real thing, and it's terrible. And just the script and everything, it was so one note, white people bad, black people good. It was a BET original, though, so I mean, you probably can guess where they were going to go with it, but just the fact that this movie even got made, regardless of racism and everything, it's just fucking amazing. Proof that anybody can get a movie funded if they just don't fucking give a shit. And they have no pride. So then we go number 11, Tom and Jerry. This was originally one of my least favorite movies of the year and still is, but it's further down the list because so many other movies got worse. Hell, I didn't even list Aquarium of the Dead in my honorable mentions because how can you expect a movie like Aquarium of the Dead to be any good? Tom and Jerry took Chloe Grace Moretz, Luis Guzman, and various others and basically had Tom and Jerry for about 20% of the goddamn movie until the very end and really wasn't even a Tom and Jerry movie. I don't know if it was as bad as the 1992 movie, the animated movie that was really fucking bad, but this was really fucking terrible. Chloe Grace Moretz, man, she deserves better than this. She was better in Shadow on the Cloud, which was a movie that was released just a few weeks before this. This was pretty fucking terrible. Pretty fucking terrible. Unfunny, and just, they had pigeons that were explaining the plot, animated pigeons that were explaining the plot because apparently they thought that everybody had sustained major head injuries that were watching the movie, because clearly anybody that made the movie had sustained major head injuries thinking that any of this was a fucking good idea. By the way, you want to hear more stuff, check out the reviews that I did. Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder's slow-mo zombie musical, terrible. Wasted Batista, wasted plenty of the hot women that were in there, and while it had some good ideas, it was also 2.5 pissing hours when it could have been an hour and 40 minutes. But nope, Zack Snyder has to get some fucking slow-mo in there. Take away Zack Snyder's directorial license, please. Number 9, Space Jam, A New Legacy, a botched legacy, a terrible legacy. Not that the original Space Jam holds up perfectly, but Michael Jordan in that fit more. LeBron being in this wasn't even the worst thing in the world, but the movie is just bad for having like a bunch of money behind it. It looked terrible. It was a good thing this was on HBO Max, because had I watched this in theaters, I probably would have fucking walked out. And it was my worst movie of the year. And then other ones just kept beating it. Kept fucking beating it like a goddamn redhead stepchild. Don't beat your kids. What the fuck is wrong with you? This was bad. Terrible. Don Cheadle and the graphics and the waste of acting and everything, and it's just the waste of the Looney Tunes licenses and trying to go and show the various licenses they have going to the various worlds, and terrible. Absolutely fucking terrible. Anyway, we go number 8, The Protege. Okay, let's take a bunch of spy movie cliches, let's take some, good actors, and let's put them in an incomprehensible mess of a spy movie that makes no sense, has a paper-thin plot, yet tries to be incomprehensible at the same time. People make decisions that, just shouldn't fit at all. No human being would make these decisions. Also, Michael Keaton was fucking wasted in this, and it was just bad. It was really, really goddamn bad. This is another choice for worst movie of the year. That was fucking goddamn terrible. Then we go to number 7, Malignant. My God, Malignant. James Wan, what the fuck were you doing? Now, I understand trying to do comedy horror and stuff like that. Action horror isn't the worst thing. But given the advertising, and given how they originally set it up, okay, you're thinking this might not be all that bad. Then the twist happens. The movie lost me halfway through with the goddamn chase scene, and then the whole twist of it was even worse. We're sure you can maybe appreciate it for its goofiness, but that doesn't mean the movie's any fucking good. And I hated it. I loathed it. Another choice for worst of the year, which was replaced then by Cinderella, the Amazon original movie with Camilla Bello, I think, Cabello, I don't actually know what the fuck her name is. She's apparently a singer, and if she sings as good as she acts and acts as good as she sings, she's fucked at both. Not that she was the worst problem in this. They butchered so many songs that it actually was amazing. They actually made me hate Rhythm Nation for a short time, and I love that song. And it was so agonizingly long. And I don't even actually recall it being, like too long, but it just felt like it lasted for about 3 fucking hours. It was a terrible, terrible version of Cinderella, and one of the worst things of this year because it was just so bad. As a musical was terrible, as a rendition of Cinderella was terrible. The fairy godmother was like the only good part of that because at least that character just seemed like they were actually trying, but then, they were gone in a flash. They did narration and they were there for a few minutes. And it was like, oh, one bright spot, and then it got taken away. And Pierce Brosnan and Minnie Driver. Remember when they were once proud actors? Me too. Number 5, Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight 2. Electric Monster Boogaloo. Okay, so remember how I said that Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight 1 was my worst movie of last year? If you harken back to that time. I actually kept my list of all the movies that I reviewed. And I remember circling that one specifically and wrote worst next to it. And it was terrible. And this one is somehow, despite the fact that I think it's actually worse, it's not even the worst thing this year, which just gives you an indication of how much I hated the next 4 movies. But they had this monster sex scene. They tried to go on the lore of it, and it was just bad. It was so fucking terrible. It took like a couple people that maybe could have been good characters, and let's twist them around, and let's just make them all evil or maybe not evil, and let's maybe blow off the movie, or let's maybe do the movie. Let's maybe, get a movie where we're going to get a third one out of this. I don't know how they're going to get a third one out of this, because as I recall, even though I tried to push every memory of this movie and every memory of this movie out of my mind, I think they might try to do a third one. Netflix needs to just, stop having Poland invade their streaming service, because it's a little bit of a twist on, the 30s and 40s. That's terrible. That's going to get me in trouble. They need to stop having this happen and just make better movies. Maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe it just doesn't make sense. But this was terrible. Though 4 others were worse. That's when I knew I was in trouble, that there were 4 movies that were worse than Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight. Home Sweet Home Alone. I hated everyone and everything about this. It took the Home Alone IP, yes, directed by Chris Columbus. I originally did say it was directed by, I said it was directed by somebody else, and I do apologize for getting that wrong in my review. I was fired up and upset. But it took the source material and made it worse. Now, not that I expected this movie to be great, but you couldn't root for the goddamn kid. You couldn't root for the adults. You couldn't root for anybody in this goddamn thing, especially in 2021 when you're thinking there's more ways to find out if you accidentally left somebody home. Now, granted, in 1990, you still should fucking realize that you left somebody home, because I don't care if you got a big family. If you can't keep track of them, maybe stop popping out so many kids. But Home Sweet Home Alone, the stunts, the comedy, everything about it. Within the first 5 minutes, I had a feeling that I wasn't going to like it, and it turned out that I really, really hated this movie. I absolutely hated it. And once again, not to chew my food twice or repeat myself, but it was going to be my worst movie of the year. And then we got to Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. I saw this and then Encanto right afterwards, and maybe it colored my opinion of Encanto, but Encanto was really fucking terrific. Check out where I rank that on my favorite movies list that's also on the playlist and on the channel. Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City was from the director of Strangers Pray at Night, and also Storage 24, and various other movies that weren't very fucking good. Now, I'm not saying this guy doesn't have talent, but it wasn't well displayed here. It was taking a bunch of people from the various games, Human Centipeding them together, terrible special effects, and sure, you may have a smaller budget than some of the other Resident Evil movies, that's fine. Just limit what you do, because sometimes I was like, okay, this looks fine, I guess, but everybody just kept making dumb decisions. They hinted that they were going to do a sequel. They threw so many people in there where it's like, by the time you got to the end, you're like, please, everybody just blow up. The train needs to blow up. Everything needs to blow up. We don't need anybody in this anymore. Just goddamn terrible. Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City was terrible. You could check out my rant on that. Number 2, and this is close to being number 1, The Matrix Resurrections. I actually was originally going to rank this about number 10, and then the more I thought about it, I go, you know what? No. This was a complete desecration, evisceration, and Warner Bros. Basically just said, hey, we're just going to do meta commentary because Lana Wachowski doesn't want to do another one, but we have the IP. We want to do another one some 18 years later, Even though the latter half of the second one wasn't all that good, and then The Matrix Revolutions, which was absolutely goddamn dire, even though everybody tried, it sort of wrapped up the trilogy nice. Then they hinted they might do another one. Had they done another one in 2009, 2010, or whatever, a few years later, okay, that would have been fine. I was 22 when the first one came out. Now I'm nearly 41 and this came out, and it was on HBO Max, and I decided to watch it because I'm like, all right, fuck it, I'll watch it. I didn't expect much from it, and my expectations weren't even met, and I had no expectations for this movie. I hated this. Everybody seemed like they were sleepwalking through, except Neil Patrick Harris. He seemed like he was trying. Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves are so much better than this. The special effects looked like shit. The slow-mo was bad. The fact that they kept just basically mocking the fans throughout this whole thing. Whatever. Now, I'm not even going to get into the whole thing about how some people were upset because it's, that they're upset that The Matrix is an allegory for transitioning and transgender people. That's not the issue. It's like, if you feel that you need to be somebody else and, live as you are and live as the real you, good for you. Nobody should be able to stop you. You should be able to live as you are as long as, consenting adults, all that jazz. The thing is that The Matrix Resurrections just as a movie isn't good. It isn't very fucking good. The more I think about it, I wonder why I didn't rank this at number 1. Oh, old. M. Night Shyamalan deserves to be shot into space for all the movies that he's done since Signs, and even Signs had its issues. Even though he's had flashes of mild brilliance since then, he hasn't done any good, and Old is easily the worst of the bunch. This is worse than a happening. It takes some actors that could have actually been good. It takes Rufus Sewell from Dark City and A Knight's Tale and various other movies, and basically makes him more of an unlikable douche just because the character makes no goddamn sense. Everybody's got health issues or some kind of issues, and they're on this beach where they're being studied. Maybe they're being studied, maybe they're not. They can't goddamn leave. It's like a Twilight Zone episode. What the hell's going on here? Are they being trapped there? What's happening? I'm not going to reveal the plot twist in case you haven't seen it, but it is really fucking dog. This is one of the worst movies I've seen in the last 10 years. I hated this, absolutely hated this. I fucking loathe this, and I just enjoyed getting one more chance to rip it apart. So yeah, even though had I actually, been able to utilize a little more time better, I might have been able to review more movies. And who knows, I might have found something worse than Old. I'm sure there are movies worse than Old, but as far as expectations, and as far as cast, and as far as idea, this frustrated me more. This made me more angry than The Matrix Resurrections by about that much. So anyway, agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.